will see para 11, my lords. The architecture of child legislations is so pervasive and significant that it even extends to covering beneficially the mother of the child. My lords, human child, my lords, I don't have to state it, but human child really is one of the most helpless childs of all, my lords, living beings in the nature. And it needs all pervasive, intense and indulgent care in the early years. And therefore, my lords, mother has been strongly protected, not just in the Constitution, but also in the Juvenile Justice Act, the Maternity Benefit Act.
Yes.
My lords, Article 42, I have, my lords, adverted to in para 11. And my lords, para 12, I have stated that a gender may be fluid, but the idea of mother cannot be. And therefore, my lords, it is very pertinent and important that this is given a very careful consideration. The whole perspective is, my lords, that what I'm presenting for your lordship's kind consideration is from the point of view to show to your lordships that this architecture, how it is going to be, my lords, impacted by a declaration and reading into Special Marriage Act.
Against the situation, which is, forget about the gender part, where there's sometimes only a father.
We have gone beyond motherhood. We have gone into parenthood today.
Yes, my lord.
Because there are, as Justice Kohli is mentioning,
Please, my lord.
there are single parents.
Please, my
Now,
lord.
Male or a
there
female.
is a death at childbirth.
Please, my lord.
The mother unfortunately dies of disease or accident.
Please, my
The
lord.
compulsion.
And there is no question of the caregiver being the father,
Please,
regardless of. Likewise, there are adopted children
Children.
Yes,
of
my lord.
only of males
Please, my lord.
by men, the fathers. So it's gone beyond the concept of, in that sense.
I bow down.
In that sense, when the Constitution envisioned it, and some of this parents' patria, interestingly, if you see the quotation of Lord Justice Lindley, he talked about husbands, guardians, and fathers.
Please, my lord.
So that was a situation where women didn't have agency. Women were even seen as wards.
Please, my lord.
Right? So therefore, the question of guardianship was that with men.
Please, my lord.
So it's an evolving,
I bow down, my lords. I bow down to what is falling from
what
your
is
lordships.
central to this, yes, is unchanging, which is the welfare of the child.
Please, my lords. So, my lords, my respectful submission would be, my lords, that your lordships may see it from the perspective that this method of naturally born heterosexual couples bringing up their children is the ideal mode. And the law and the entire regulation has provided for, my lords, children who do not have that. From that perspective, please see now, my lords, the aspect of adoption. I have given one example in para 13 of sponsorship, which is available to only widowed, divorced, or abandoned mothers to seek sponsorship for their children. That's a protection under Section 45, specifically available only to this category of women, my lords. Then please see, my lords, please see para 14. My respectful submission is adoption is not an alternate to biological birth, my lords. My respectful submission is that adoption is a mechanism to find best.
Our law does recognize that you can adopt for a variety of reasons.
Yes.
You may adopt even though you are capable of biological birth.
Please,
You can adopt if you don't want biological birth.
please, my lords.
There's no compulsion to have biological children. Therefore, our law does recognize
Please, my lords.
the fact that there may be situations within this ideal of a cohabiting family with father and mother of of a heterosexual gender family having their own biologically born children. But that's not
Please.
how our law is postulated also, right? What happens if, suppose, during the between the pendency, during the tenure of a heterosexual marriage, one of the spouses dies, then the other spouse really assumes the character of a father and the mother, depending on, isn't it? So that is something which our law recognizes.
My lords, I bow down. The law recognizes again from the perspective of the child. Your lordships have held that there is no fundamental right of adoption.
No, I think we may differ on that, because even if you go back to tradition,
Yes, my lords.
the right of a grandfather to take in adoption
Please, my lords.
the son of the daughter, what is classically known as one of the approved forms of forms of having a child,
Yes, my lords.
Pitrika Putra.
Please, my lords.
So that is a known notion. So it is not that this is no sanction. It is hallowed. It's hallowed in
My lords,
tradition.
I bow down, my lords.
Therefore, to say this is an exception may not be appropriate.
My
And
lords-
why did even in some schools, even grown women, widows, are enabled to adopt? Why? There's another purpose there.
My lords,
And even there are situations where adoptions take place, and thereafter there is biological birth.
please.
That too happens. So there are any number of situations where adoptions is the norm.
My
But
lords-
yes, you're right. But then all this is serving to emphasize and heavily underline that there is a normal and these are exceptions.
My lords, my respectful submission is not of exception. My endeavor is to present to your lordships that all of this is crafted together from the perspective of child being at the core of it. It's not right that in yours.
Ms. Bhati, that you need not labor at all. That
May not be. That may not be.
But the welfare of the child is paramount, obviously.
Definitely.
True.
So, my lord, adoption is, I want to show to your
But
lordship.
the means of realizing that welfare are numerous. The pathways are
I bow down.
numerous.
I bow down. In fact,
Some of
adoption.
them are a matter of choice, some are a matter of compulsion.
I bow down, my lords, and the Kara guidelines
But
actually.
tell us one thing, is it your case that a right which is otherwise available to an individual to adopt a child is taken away because that individual is in any relationship otherwise than a heterosexual marriage?
That is right, my lords. And that is not just true for adoption. That is true for assisted reproduction, which is now regulated by the assisted
So
reproduction.
if two people are in a live-in relationship,
Yes, my lords.
does that mean that therefore, because of the fact that the two people are in a live-in relationship,
Yes.
maybe a heterosexual couple, that they will not have a right to adopt?
Not under the existing law, my lords. Not just adopt,
But
my lords.
is the right of one of them to adopt taken away because she or he is in a live-in relationship?
My lords, one of them can adopt. But the only couple relationship that adoption
It's a heterosexual
and surrogate reproduction, all three of them only recognize one kind of couple. That is a heterosexual married couple.
Therefore, no. But therefore, if a heterosexual couple is in a live-in relationship, one of them can certainly adopt? Or is it Kara's case that we will deny you the right to adopt because you are in a heterosexual live-in relationship?
No, my lords. I permit me to show it to your lordships the Kara
If I may paraphrase your argument, it is
Yes, my
like
lord.
this. The public policy consideration which you are actually mooting or advocating, or rather stating, is that yes, we allow adoptions by single, let's say males, single females, in their capacity as single males or single females.
Please, my lords.
But
not
the moment they enter into either
Union
a
or
same-sex relationship or another kind of live-in relationship, that relationship is not per se recognized.
I bow down, my lords.
So the only recognition of a relationship of father and mother is where there is a
Heterosexual marriage.
Lordships, please. And that is true not just for adoption, but also ART Act.
My question is different. If people are in a live-in relationship,
Please, my lords.
then is the right of an individual in a live-in relationship to adopt taken away by virtue of the fact that they're in a live-in relationship?
My lords, they will not be, so only one parent can adopt as a
Fair enough.
mother or the single.
That we've got.
Lordship.
But your circular says something to the contrary.
No,
Because your circular says that the moment you are in a live-in relationship, albeit in a same-sex relationship, then you cannot adopt even as a single individual.
my lords, I will quickly take your lordships through the architecture of the JJ Act.
Also,
Yes, sure.
find one more fact, Ms. Bhati. besides the fact that Honorable the CJ has pointed out,
Please, my lord.
there is that condition. And what if, and that what if will be important, that somebody per se says that he or she is not in a live-in relationship, you probably have a format or something that a person has to sign or say this for you to satisfy yourself, and subsequently does, then what happens? Will the child be taken back?
My lords, there is provision for disruption and dissolution in adoption also. There, my lords, it is carefully crafted because child who is adopted will become a child of that person for all purposes, for inheritance,
That's right.
for all other rights. So, my lords, it cannot allow this. There can be no uncertainty in, my lords, in these matters when it concerns.
Person, if he or she elect to adopt, will for the rest of their lives have to undertake that they will never be in a
No,
relationship.
my lords, there is no undertaking like that.
Unless it's a case of
No,
they
my
are
lords.
actually marrying.
No,
What
my
is
lords,
it
there-
that you are put?
There is no undertaking
What is
like
it that you are?
My lords, what I will tell your lordships how they are constructed is that a heterosexual married couple has to also have 2 years of stable relationship of marriage before they can adopt. It's not like they can and they have to have consent from each other.
And if
It's
it's a single parent,
if it's a single parent, then there are other considerations. What is their age? What is the gender of the child? What is their gender? I want to quickly show to your lordships the architecture under the JJ Act, the CARA.
Shows that.
Lordships, may see, my lords. That compilation A, I have put all the 3 acts.
Sorry.
My lords.
all
Mr. Bhatti, what I can get what sister is saying is, suppose there is a single adoption.
Please, my lord.
There is an adoption by a single person. After a couple of years, child is being brought up by that parent, and he decides you can't guarantee the future what will happen. So he decides to have a, say, to begin with a live-in relationship. That's not a disqualification.
Not at all.
It will be there. So how do you explain this?
My lords, I will quickly take 5-10 minutes and take your lordships through the architecture, starting with the
Ms.
JJ Act.
Bhati, we can recognize 2 points which you have made. One, if a couple wants to adopt a child, then our adoption regulatory regime only recognizes the right to adopt when you are in a heterosexual marital relationship.
Please, my lords.
All right? That's your first point.
Please.
We understand why and what the public policy underlying that is.
Please,
That if you have to be a couple, if you have to be a mother and father, you must be necessarily in a heterosexual marriage before you can both adopt a child as a couple.
Please.
That's your first proposition.
Lordships.
What we are asking you really is on something slightly different, which is nonetheless, our law recognizes the right of a single individual to adopt.
Yes, my lords.
And the question, therefore, is, and we take it that's your position also, that the right of a single individual to adopt is not affected by the relationship which that single individual may otherwise have, whether it's in the nature of a live-in relationship, which is heterosexual, or a live-in or a relationship of a same sex. So long as you are adopting, as a single individual.
Lordships. I bow down, my lords. That is my stated position. And my lords, your lordships will appreciate that because the law.
So we therefore take it that even a same-sex couple,
Yes, my lord.
or let me rephrase it, an individual in a same-sex relationship
Please, my lords.
is not precluded from adopting a child. We
Please,
take
my
that as Kara's statement of position.
That is the mandate of Juvenile Justice Act.
Please.
That is the mandate of.
If I may just make one more statement,
Lordship.
you will agree with. A single parent
Please, my lord.
who adopts remains a single parent, there is no difficulty. The moment she enters into a matrimonial relationship
Please, my lords.
with, it's a heterosexual relationship,
Please, my lords.
then the husband becomes the father,
Lordships.
correct? The adoptive father, like she's the
Lordship.
adoptive mother. So then the child, as a consequence, becomes the heir in the event of death to the properties of either,
Yes, my
and rather both.
yes.
On the other hand, if the single parent enters into a same-sex relationship, then the adoptive child continues to be the adoptive child of that adoptive father or the mother.
Please,
And no more, full stop.
Yes.
This is your proposition.
lordships. My
What
lords,
you say is.
So
that,
therefore,
it doesn't
sorry,
recognize
just to take one thought further, what you're driving at here is the stability. Because even in the event of disruption of the family, like in the case of marriage, there is a divorce. The relationship of an adoptive child continues.
lordships.
Whereas since there is no marriage and there is no marriage recognition, that stability would be undermined if you recognize.
I bow down, my lords. I bow down to your lordships. My lords, Justice Narasimha had a point.
Same. I was
My lords, in
looking
fact,
at
Kara has
your argument.
a fast-track method for step-parent adoption also. It may happen that somebody has a natural-born child and she becomes a divorcee or a widow and she remarries. So her child can be adopted.
Yes, by
There's a
Right,
there's a mechanism
This,
that is.
yes.
My lords, it's actually, it's very carefully crafted. My lords, we are a culture of my lords,
Perhaps-
Yashoda Mata and also Devki Mata, my lords. So
Perhaps-
both, my lords, one who gave birth and one who reared the child.